Aim trainers created a generation of incomplete players, and the weird part is that aim trainers absolutely do work. That's why this problem is so hard to notice in the first place. A lot of players improved their raw mouse control dramatically over the last 5 years through aim training, but at the exact same time, a massive number of those same players became worse at integrating aim into actual duels in game. The result is this strange modern FPS player where someone can dominate static clicking scenarios for hours, then completely fall apart the second positioning and team coordination enters the equation. I'll be explaining why isolated aim training accidentally created a distorted understanding of what aiming actually is, why so many mechanically talented players struggle to transfer their skill into the real game, and what complete aim development actually looks like if your goal is performance instead of KovaaK's leaderboard scores. For context, I'm currently top 200 in the finals and I've helped my team reach second place across all USA colleges in Valorant. I've also won against full-time pro players in leaderboard stacks more than 700 times across 5 FPS titles. What I'll be sharing with you isn't just theory, it's the principles that allow me to compete at the highest level without having inhuman aim. One of the biggest misconceptions in FPS improvement is the idea that aiming is purely a mouse control problem. That belief sounds reasonable because when you watch a player miss shots, the miss itself is visible. You see the crosshair fail to land on target, so naturally people conclude the issue must be flick precision, tracking smoothness, or micro adjustments. But in actual games, aim is usually the final output of a much larger chain of systems happening before. Your movement affects your aim, your positioning affects your aim, your prediction affects your aim, your timing affects your aim. Even your understanding of enemy behavior affects your aim because better prediction changes how much reactive correction your mechanics need to do in the first place. This is why sometimes you get Chad as a teammate, who has mediocre raw mechanics, but still closes out the game top fragging. His entire system reduces aim difficulty before the mouse movement even happens. Then you compare that to little Timmy, who spent 600 hours grinding static dots in KovaaKs, developed incredible isolated clicking mechanics, but still loses fights because he takes every duel as a last second panic reaction. Timmy is trying to solve combat entirely with reactive mouse movement. Chad is using perception, movement, anticipation, and positioning to simplify the shot before it even happens. What made aim trainers so powerful historically is that they solved the real problem. Before aim training became mainstream, most FPS players improved aim almost entirely through passive repetition. They spammed ranked games back to back and hoped mechanics would improve naturally over time. Aim trainers introduced deliberate practice into FPS improvement. That was a huge leap forward. Thousands of players genuinely developed better mouse control thanks to it. The issue is that the industry slowly began confusing the mouse component of aiming with the entirety of aiming itself. You can actually see this problem reflected in sports science research as well. Modern perception action research repeatedly shows that high-level performance is not just about producing movement accurately. It's about linking perception, decision making, and movement together under realistic conditions. Researchers in motor learning and sports performance have increasingly criticized isolated training environments that remove action coupling because they fail to represent the real demands of competition. That sounds extremely academic until you translate it into simpler terms. Imagine practicing basketball shots while standing perfectly still in an empty gym with no defenders. No movement, no shot clock, no decision making. Your shooting mechanics will definitely improve, but eventually the skill becomes disconnected from the environment where it actually matters. That is essentially what happened with a lot of the modern aim training culture. Players trained aim in environments with minimal movement integration, minimal perception stress, and almost no tactical context. Then the same players get confused when their ranked performance fails to scale proportionally. This is also why you sometimes see mechanically insane aim trainer players struggle badly in FPS games. The issue usually is not that their raw mechanics are fake. The issue is that FPS games heavily reward perception quality, angle anticipation, and efficient pre-aim. In many fights, the winning player barely needs reactive aim correction at all because the duel was already simplified beforehand. I've seen way too many Reddit posts from high-level aim training players describing this exact phenomenon. You'll see players achieve advanced benchmark scores while still being stuck in silver rank because their skill transfer is incomplete. Aim trainers are not useless, but the skill transfer problem exists because isolated mechanics alone cannot carry the full combat system. One of the most damaging side effects of this culture is that it subtly changed how players think improvement works. A lot of players now unconsciously believe that every missed shot is solved through more isolated repetition. So instead of improving their movement, prediction, or peaking, they endlessly grind more KovaaK scenarios hoping the issue disappears. But many missed shots are not execution failures. Most of them are information failures. For example, if an enemy's strafe pattern surprises you, your mechanics now need to perform emergency correction. If your crosshair placement is poor, your flick distance increases. If your movement timing is bad, your shot stability collapses. If your positioning forces reactive wide-angle flicks constantly, your aim consistency drops even if your raw mechanics are elite. In other words, incomplete perception creates mechanically difficult aim situations. This is why experienced high-level players often look effortlessly accurate. They're not always producing superhuman mouse movements. Many times, they're just seeking the fight earlier than everybody else. Their prediction quality reduces the amount of correction required. Their positioning reduces target variability. Their movement creates easier tracking windows. Their aim looks cleaner because the fight itself becomes cleaner. This is also why I've seen movement training often improving aim faster than static clicking for certain players. Movement changes the entire perception to action loop. Suddenly, your brain is no longer practicing isolated cursor placement. It is practicing coordinated combat interaction. Researchers studying perception-action coupling in sports repeatedly emphasize that realistic performance environments matter because perception and movement are fundamentally linked systems. Most FPS players already intuitively understand this without actually realizing it. Everyone has experienced situations where their aim feels incredible one day and terrible the next day, even if you have the same mouse and the same arm. Usually the difference between these 2 days is your understanding of the enemy and your confidence as a result of that. Skill hierarchy starts changing here as well. Beginner players benefit massively from raw mechanics because they genuinely cannot control the mouse well yet. But as players become more advanced, isolated mechanics produce diminishing returns unless they are integrated into perception and movement systems. So at the higher levels, the game becomes less about can you move the mouse accurately and more about can you create conditions where accurate movement becomes easier and faster. That distinction is enormous. Let's bring back Little Timmy in chat to help explain this a little bit better. Little Timmy spends 3 hours trying to improve his 1 wall 6 target score by another 4%. Chad spends those same hours learning enemy movement tendencies, practicing reactive strafing drills, improving angle timing, and integrating target acquisition under dynamic movement conditions. AKA, he's just playing deathmatch. While Timmy is improving his laboratory score, Chad is improving his actual combat score. This goes without saying, but the best aimers in actual FPS games usually do train mechanics. But they also train perception. They also train their own movement and reading the movements of their enemies. So overall, they're training combat rhythm. Their aim is connected to the game itself instead of existing as an isolated minigame. And honestly, this realization is a huge reason why I became interested in developing the world's first aim training mouse. It's specifically designed around improving aim skill itself rather than just functioning as another shape or weight variation. The deeper you study aiming, the more obvious it becomes that pure static precision is only one layer of the system. Long-term improvement comes from training interaction, adaptation, perception, and control together rather than treating aim like a disconnected spreadsheet optimization. The solution here is not quitting aim trainers entirely. That would be an overcorrection. Aim trainers are extremely effective for developing foundational mechanics, fixing weaknesses, improving smoothness, building confidence, and increasing overall mouse control capacity. The mistake is treating isolated mechanics as the full game instead of one tool inside a larger system. Aim train inside their game by playing deathmatch. They practice reactive scenarios, then they train target reading. Then they'll hop into a real game and pressure test those mechanics in real fights. They focus on prediction quality as much as they focus on correction speed. Most importantly, they stop evaluating their aim purely through isolated scores and start evaluating it through combat outcomes. Because the uncomfortable truth is that FPS aiming was never about just the mouse. Aim trainers helped the industry discover deliberate practice, which was genuinely valuable. But somewhere along the way, a lot of players accidentally started training the output while ignoring the process creating the output in the first place. This is exactly how aim trainers created a generation of incomplete players. Real quick, if you watched this far into the video, please consider subscribing. Currently, 95% of my viewers don't bother subbing to the channel, and every sub really means a lot for a channel of my size. Thanks a lot for considering. The players improving the fastest right now are not the ones obsessing over isolated precision alone. They are the ones learning how to merge mechanics into the full combat ecosystem, and ironically, once you finally understand that, your raw aim often improves anyway, because the game starts feeding you easier shots. And only at that point does aiming stop feeling like desperate correction and starts actually feeling control. I'll put in a few clips of my own gameplay in top 200 lobbies to demonstrate my point. Enjoy.